رسول الله صاحب الأخلاق العظيمة المؤدب بآداب القرآن فكان عفوا رحيما وعلى آله وأصحابه الذين تحلوا بتلك الصفة الكريمة وعفوا عمن ظلمهم ووصلوا من قطعهم فكانوا إخوة متحابين كالجسد الواحد. أما بعد، أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. فقد قال تعالى في القرآن المجيد: خذ العفو وأمر بالعرف وأعرض عن الجاهلين. آمنت بالله صدق الله العظيم. Respected Ustaz Qari Khalid Mahmood Sahib, respected ulama, respected huffaz, respected elders, brothers in Islam, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. On the 27th of Rajab, the greatest miracle ever to be bestowed was bestowed upon the greatest ever prophet. This miracle was of such a highly extraordinary nature that it even shook the faith of Muslims, and this was none other than the Isra-e-miraj. The Prophet ﷺ is the only creation who has been given the opportunity to meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala physically and spiritually. Inshallah, we will hear various talks regarding the specific events that took place on this blessed night by the respected shuyukh. But what made our beloved Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam so great that even his creator wanted to meet him? Every aspect of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam had reached the peak of excellence, but his mercy and kindness was like the moon amongst the stars. Every star is great, but what are the stars in comparison to the moon? Ever since the beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam openly proclaimed his prophecy on Mount Safa, he endured unimaginable hardship, but his devotion, his commitment, and his struggle for the propagation of Islam never disappeared. The non-Muslims continuously persecuted and punished the Prophet ﷺ and even tried to assassinate him, not once but many times. Just to give you a few examples of what the Prophet ﷺ faced. Once there was a fair that used to occur in Makkah. The Prophet ﷺ was going around and preaching to everyone to say that there is only one God worthy of worship. And behind him was a broad man, Abu Lahab, saying that he is a liar. And each time the Prophet ﷺ was preaching this, he would repeatedly say that this man is a liar. And according to some narrations, he would follow him and throw mud upon him. It didn't stop there. The Prophet ﷺ's two daughters were married to the sons of Abu Lahab. And as soon as the Prophet ﷺ claimed prophethood, Abu Lahab's two sons were made to divorce the daughters of the Prophet ﷺ. How true was the saying of the Prophet ﷺ that the cruelty that I faced, no one else had ever faced this cruelty. Uqba used to put his filth and excretion in the garden of the Prophet ﷺ, and once he invited the Prophet ﷺ for a meal. The Prophet ﷺ, being the most kind and the most merciful, even though he knew that Uqba was the one who used to throw filth and excretion in his garden, accepted this invitation. And this shows the importance of attending invitations. According to some scholars, attending invitations is wajib, and according to some, if a person is voluntarily fasting, then if he has been invited for a feast, then it is recommended for him, only if it's a voluntary fast, it's recommended for him to break that fast and join in with the barakah of the feast. So later, the Prophet ﷺ, Uqba asked the Prophet ﷺ to begin eating. The Prophet ﷺ said that, "Oh Uqba, I will not begin eating until you accept Islam.
Nare Takbir, Nare Risalah, Nare Haidari, Ulama Ahle Sunnah.
The Prophet ﷺ said that of Islam, such harsh punishments, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guided the Prophet ﷺ towards mercy and kindness. As he says in the Holy Quran, خُذِ الْعَفْوَ وَأْمُرْ بِالْعُرْفِ وَأَعْرِضْ عَنِ الْجَاهِلِينَ. O Prophet, adopt mercy, order with goodness, and avoid the ignorant. This is from the sign of the lenient Sharia, by not burdening people to what they can't handle, forgiving them from their mistakes, which results in a peaceful environment and guiding pure souls upon righteousness. This is one of the reasons that Islam spread so rapidly during the time of the Prophet ﷺ, because he was the most merciful and the most kind. Where shop owners could leave their stores on the streets of Medina without any worry of their belongings being stolen. This forgiveness amongst the greatest prophet is the reason that Islam touched thousands of souls and penetrated through so many hearts. Brothers in Islam, one of the reasons we are in such a state is that we have lost this mercy, this forgiveness, not amongst the non-Muslims, but even amongst our fellow Muslim brothers. Forgiveness has become the last thing on our mind, and it is as if we believe that we are too great to forgive a person, or by forgiving such and such, our status will degrade. And it seems as though revenge and hatred is the first thing that comes to our mind. Or people, throughout the Prophet ﷺ's lifetime, never did he ever resort to revenge, as the Prophet ﷺ was sent as a mercy to mankind. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala states in the Holy Quran, وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ إِلَّا رَحْمَةً لِلْعَالَمِينَ. O Prophet, we did not send you except as a mercy to the worlds. The Prophet ﷺ never once got angry for himself, but always remained merciful even towards his enemies. Have we forgotten about the fall of Makkah? Open the books of history. Nabi alayhi salatu wassalam enters Makkah with 10,000 men. Never have the kuffar seen an army like this before. The kuffar are trembling as they know that one signal from the Prophet ﷺ will result in their heads being chopped off. The Prophet ﷺ makes his way to the Kaaba. The leaders of Makkah are standing in front of him in fear and shame, thinking that he is going to take revenge from them. These are the very same people who called the Prophet ﷺ names. They called him a magician, a storyteller. These are the very same people who kept the Prophet ﷺ besieged in the valley of Abi Talib for 3 years. Such was the state of the Muslims that they went without food for many days, and at times had to eat grass and leaves just to stay alive. They persecuted the Muslims so much that they forced the Prophet ﷺ from his birthplace, Makkah, and he had to migrate to Medina Munawwara. In the Battle of Uhud, these very same people injured the Prophet ﷺ. His teeth became shaheed, and there was blood flowing from the blessed body of the Prophet ﷺ. They persecuted the Prophet ﷺ by mutilating the martyrs of Uhud. They cut off their ears, they cut off their noses, and made necklaces out of the flesh of Muslim martyrs. Now how should the people of Makkah be punished? Let's look at how the Prophet ﷺ dealt with such hardships and the wisdom that he used in such circumstances. The Prophet ﷺ poses a question. Ya ma'ashar Quraysh, ma tarawna anni fa'il